The reason why everyone hates bulking is because they're doing it wrong. If you've ever gone on a journey where you've deliberately tried to build muscle, whether you called that a building phase or a bulk or gaintaining or whatever you want to call it, it can be scary for a lot of people because there is an element of gaining weight, and for that reason a lot of people don't do it right. Then there's the flip side of people who are almost like overzealous and struggle with it in that regard. But I'm not going to talk about this today. This is a rare occurrence where we have both Coach Ben and Coach Sawyer, and they are going to give you the top 5 mistakes that they see people making when they're on a building journey. And if that's something that you're interested in, be sure to hit the subscribe button because we put out new videos every week that include things like tips, tricks, recipes, meal plans, just all of the straightforward science with none of the fluff, so you guys don't have to make all the mistakes that we did. So without further ado, I will let Coach Sawyer and Coach Ben take it away.
Hey everyone, this is Coach Sawyer, and I want to talk to you about a couple mistakes that I have made, and I'm sure some of you have probably made while bulking. So the first one is not training hard enough. When we talk about being in a bulk, we're talking about creating an environment in which nutrition is permissive of making progress, not actually driving progress. So you don't want to be in a position where your weight is going up, 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 but your training is not doing the same thing. That's not a good sign. And I think we've all made that mistake before. So what you want to do instead is eat just enough so that you know that your progress is not being limited by the weight gain or the lack of weight gain. And this is really particularly important when you have been plateaued for a while at a certain amount of calories and you've already gone through and kind of checked off the boxes of, am I training intensely enough? Am I doing all kinds of things right? So that's what we're talking about right now, is that if you are not training intensely enough, if you are not training well enough, you are not going to get the benefits of eating more food, and you're gonna feel frustrated that you're kind of stuck in the same place as you were, but with more body fat. When we're talking about training intensely enough, we really mean we're trying to train close to failure. And failure just means that you actually attempt a rep and then fail it, right? And you don't need to go all the way to failure to make progress, definitely not. But the closer that you get to that point is the more intense that set is gonna be. And really the only way or the best way to know if you're approaching failure is if the reps are slowing down. So it doesn't mean you have to be rushing through your sets or your reps at the beginning of the set, but whatever pace you do choose to go with from the beginning of the set should be impossible to keep throughout the whole set. You should be struggling towards the end and going involuntarily slow, because that is your body or your muscles saying, I can't do this again, and you're gonna say, yes I am, yes I can, and you're trying to really make them do more than they're capable of doing. Again, don't have to go all the way to failure, don't have to drop it on yourself, but you do need to get close to where your muscles can handle.
All right, so the second mistake that people often make when they are bulking or in a calorie surplus is that they let a lot of the habits go that they had previously. So oftentimes when we are going into a build, when we're intentionally trying to gain muscle and slowly add weight over time, we tend to let go of some of the habits that got us to that place where we were able to have some runway to gain some muscle and a little bit of body fat that's going to come along with that. When you are dieting or even at maintenance, you might have a lot of things that you're paying attention to. So you are weighing yourself maybe every day to get a weekly average of your body weight and track that over time. You're taking progress photos and measurements. Maybe you're tracking your steps or you're doing some sort of formal cardio. You're making sure that your sleep is on point. A lot of those good sleep hygiene habits, maybe aiming to get 7 to 9 hours of high quality sleep every single night. You're on top of your water intake. You're trying to eat a good amount of fruits and vegetables and make sure that your diet is varied and that you're getting a lot of different micronutrients in. Sometimes we tend to forget those things when we say to ourselves, well, you know, I have a little bit more wiggle room with my calories now. So instead of going for maybe those fruits and vegetables that I usually go for, I'm gonna get something that is maybe a little bit more palatable, that still technically fits my macros or you know, my calorie and my protein target, but maybe it's not the most nutritious thing for me to be having. Or maybe you decide to stay out a little bit longer, or maybe you reincorporate alcohol. Maybe that had been something that you had been limiting previously. And so over time, a lot of those good habits that we've built tend to let go because we now feel like we have more freedom being in a surplus, and we do, and that's a really nice part about being in a build, is having that calorie surplus, which gives us stuff like more social flexibility. But if we take advantage of that too often and we're going out all the time, we're ordering in, before you know it, you may have cut short your ability to continue gaining in this muscle building phase, and before you know it, you want to go back into a cut, or go right to maintenance, and maybe you could have kind of prolonged that muscle building phase and set yourself up for better results in the future had you continued to adhere to those habits. So what I would encourage you to do when you are transitioning from a cut or from maintenance into a build is to keep all of those good habits that you've been doing currently. Now your coach, or you yourself, if you're self-coached, may choose to make some adjustments, maybe do a little bit less steps, but you want to try to keep things relatively stable. The only real difference is that you're eating a little bit more. Everything else should remain relatively the same.
Mistake number 3 is gaining too quickly. Just like we talked about before, is that nutrition is permissive of gains. It means that we don't need to eat a ton more than your maintenance calories to move the needle, right? So if somebody says they want to do a bulk and they start telling me what they plan to eat, and it ends up being somewhere along the lines of 500 calories over their maintenance or more, I caution them to go a bit slower if they say they're going to go that quickly, because muscle protein synthesis happens very slowly. You cannot force yourself to gain more muscle by eating a ton more than your maintenance. You need to be patient and diligent about creating a surplus, but you cannot force feed that process, okay? So usually what I tell people is gaining at an appropriate rate for your experience level, which is going to go a bit slower as your muscle gain potential goes down, right? So the more developed your muscles are, the harder it is going to be to gain more at that point. So you're going to want to gain even slower. But if you're newer to the gym, you're more intermediate, you can be a little bit more aggressive about the calorie intake because you have more muscle building capacity, right? So you want to make sure that the amount of calories that you're eating is appropriate for your experience level, your capability to gain muscle. But no matter what, you're not trying to outpace your rate of gain, and muscle gain happens very slowly. Come here, babies. Come here. Come here.
I don't think he actually got it.
All right, so tip number 4 for when you are in a build is going to be to not get overly focused on having your diet be 100% clean or whole foods and limiting your food selection. Now, I know this goes a little bit contrary to the last point that I talked about with being overly inclusive, but we also don't want to go the other direction where we become overly restrictive. So being in a build allows you more flexibility with the foods that you can incorporate. Of course, you can eat anything. Calories are the main thing that matter in your macronutrient goals at the end of the day. You can eat anything, whether you're in a deficit or in a build, but it can be harder to adhere to your diet if you're incorporating maybe more of these kind of palatable foods versus when you're in a build, you might have some more flexibility. So maybe you find, hey, I can go out to eat once or twice a week, whereas before, maybe it was once a week or maybe more for special occasions because you had that kind of targeted, focused goal for that period of time. You don't want to get too focused on, okay, I need to only have, let's say, for instance, my protein come from lentils and tofu and tempeh, and I can't use anything like TVP or seitan or even protein bars and protein powders. These can be really helpful things to allow us to achieve our macronutrient goals. Also, you might get to a point in your build, everyone's a little bit different, you may or may not encounter this, where actually eating becomes a little bit more difficult and you find that your progress is kind of slowing down or stalling in the gym. And so you may need to increase the amount of food that you're eating. But sometimes if your appetite is a limiting factor for you, it can be really tough to continue to either up your protein or up your calories, whatever it may be, if you are limiting yourselves to, it has to be only whole grains and nuts and seeds and you can't have any processed food. Actually, some of these foods can be exactly the tool that you need in order to continue on to your goals. And I think it's also really important to say that this has to be something that is a lifestyle for you and something that you can see yourself maintaining for not just weeks or months, but years into the future. So yeah, there are going to be times where you probably want to enjoy some vegan ice cream with a partner, with friends, family, go out to eat, or even just to incorporate some of these things into your daily diet. And that's something that is not only something that can be done, but I think should be encouraged in order to give you that feeling of flexibility and freedom that comes as part of a sustainable fitness lifestyle.
No, okay. You're not allowed.
Okay.
Nobody's ever mad that there's a cat.
I'm not. Fear of gaining weight.
Yeah, that's going to be the fifth one that we're talking about today, is being afraid to put on weight. Often that is tied to the scale, and there can be a lot of emotional baggage there for a lot of folks.
Yeah.
But the fear of gaining body fat is more specifically, I think, what people are talking about. Because if you were gaining weight, but it was all muscle, and your appearance was changing in a great way, people wouldn't really care.
Yeah, well, even still, people get scared of the scale going up.
I agree.
But I think it is easier to stomach if you think, oh, it's just all muscle. But you know, that's not the reality either. So.
And I think it's important to say that our goal in a build is not to necessarily gain body fat, but it is going to be something that is naturally going to happen as part of the process. And I really like to get people to focus on the benefits as opposed to maybe some of the fear. So really focusing on the training performance in the gym, basically all the things that we just talked about. But I want to shift people's mind from minimizing fat gain. I want to take people away from there and think about maximizing muscle gain, because our goal in a build is not to necessarily gain body fat. Body fat, once you know how to do it, you can take it off anytime. Gaining muscle is a lot more difficult.
It's a lot slower process too, so you have to be really committed to the process. You can't just eat more calories for a couple weeks and say, oh, there, I did it, that's it, and expect to get all the benefits that you really want long term.
And I think oftentimes people see the scale go up a couple pounds and they want to reverse directions and they want to switch back immediately, but it's really important that you stick it out, because these processes take lots of time and they can't just be, you know, gain for a month, cut for a week, gain for a month, cut for a week. Sometimes people want to do that sort of thing. It's really that slow, long process that is going to get you there. And it doesn't need to be anything quick where your appearance is drastically changing. In fact, most people are probably not going to notice at all. It's only going to be you that is thinking about it and noticing it longer. And something that I think can help is think about the people that you look up to, the people that you see on social media or in the magazines. They've all done this. They've all gone through builds and bulks. They didn't get that muscle.
If they have any appreciable amount of muscle, unless, you know, if you're, you know, aiming to be like a really lean person without much muscle, okay. But like anybody who has appreciable amount of muscle has stuck it out through one of these periods of
time. And when people say they want to look toned or they want to look like this person, that's what they mean. They mean having more muscle and being a little bit leaner. But the nice thing about getting leaner is you can kind of do it anytime, and it doesn't take as much investment there as opposed to building. And there's just so many benefits that come from being in a build. It's my favorite time, and I know as a male it can be a little bit easier to accept than women. But I have been encouraged to see that I think a lot more women are beginning to understand or come around to the idea that building muscle does require a little bit of discomfort and being willing to do something that you haven't done before. If you want to look a way you've never looked before, oftentimes you have to do something you've never done before.
Exactly. It's a little bit uncomfortable to get used to taking up space and like being like, this is my body, and you know, this isn't the final product or whatever I want, but it's still part of the process of getting what I want. And also I think it's should be mentioned that it's really helpful, I think, to surround yourself with people who get that, who understand what you're doing and don't just think you're letting yourself go and feel the need to bring that up every other week. You know what I mean? So I think surrounding yourself with supportive people, kind of letting people know what you're doing, can really help you feel more self-assured that nobody's going to be poking and prodding you. So if you're afraid of especially one particular person's comments, kind of let them know what you're doing and what the benefits of it are. That can help take some of the pressure away. And then if you have a friend group or kind of a social circle that kind of understands what you're trying to do and why it's important to you, that can also alleviate some of the fear of the questions you might get that could be, you know, set you off a little bit too.
And speaking of having a supportive community of people who lift you up and that you can look to for inspiration, we have taken through hundreds of people through this process at Vegan Proteins and have gone through builds and bulks, and we have people who are going to be supportive on your journey. So if you're interested in learning more about that, you can head over to VeganProteins.com, check out our Muscles by Brussels membership, and you can get in contact with us by filling out an application down below. We'll get back to you within 24 hours. Coach@VeganProteins.com is the best way to reach us. And before you click off the video, if you could make sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe, drop a comment down below if you're someone who's struggled maybe with building, with bulking. We'll get in there and we can help you kind of work through some things there. But the best place to reach us is veganproteins.com, and you can check us out at social media at Vegan Proteins, at Muscles by Brussels, at Benji_Prodigy, and at
Soyboy Fitness Coaching.
Soyboy Fitness Coaching. Thank you everyone for watching the video, and we'll see everyone in the next one.
Bye guys.
Bye-bye.